Good evening and happy Halloween. Tonight I'm very happy to welcome Andronica Marquis. She's a writer, director, producer, and an actress from the United States. How are you, Andronica?
I'm
Ni-
doing
Thank
well.
you for coming on this holy night.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. Yeah, I want to thank you for joining the live and for sharing with me the link of your latest short film.
Thank you.
I
You're
think
very
it came
welcome.
out 2 years ago, but it was released in many festivals,
Mhm.
around the
Right.
world in the United States.
Hmm.
First, before we talk about your film Medea, I want to ask you, and as well you can talk about your early beginnings and your interest into the art. How did it start with you?
Well, I've always been a movie buff. And my mom used to take me to classic movies here in San Francisco at this beautiful old theater called the Castro. And
Yeah.
then high school, I got interested in acting and I wanted to be an actress. But the school that I wanted to go to, the Academy of Dramatic Arts in LA, wasn't a college, and both my parents were educators. So they insisted I go to a college. So I went to a theater college up in Seattle. And theater, it was a great school and I got a great acting education, but it's very different world than film. And I didn't really make that distinction at the time. So I went down to LA as soon as I could, but I felt kind of lost. And then my journey changed and I got married and had a stepson for about 14 years. And then when the marriage ended, I went back down to LA to learn the business. And I started connecting with people, and I got a manager, and I did an acting competition in New York that went well, but the manager was kind of shady, and so it didn't lead to anything, which was a big disappointment at the time. And then I met these people who were looking for a short film script to to be a film about drones. They wanted a military action film drone about drones. And so I jumped in and said I could write that for them because the subject interested me. And so I did that, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I directed it and eventually produced it. And that's why I'm dressed like this for Halloween, because it's one of my
Yes.
characters in Drone.
Yes.
But then the person who was producing it uh, didn't realize how expensive visual effects were. So we had all the footage, but we had no drone and no action for this action film. So I put it on a shelf for a while because we couldn't afford visual effects. And by that time, I realized that because I never thought that I could direct a film, I never thought I could make a film at all. It was just seemed out of my reach. But after this experience with drone, I knew that I could. And so I had this other idea for this script based on Greek myth, Medea. And so I came back to help take care of my parents in San Francisco. And that's when I developed the film. And from the ground up, I handled every aspect of it. And it was my first real film that I completed entirely on my own and directed. And it did well in festivals. So it was very gratifying.
Yes. And right now, Medea, you told me it was influenced by Greek mythology, of
Yes.
course.
Yes.
But tell me about the process of developing it, as a writer, director, producer. And I understood right now that you enjoy being, behind the camera as much as being in front of it. So explain to me about what happened behind the scene
Well, actually, I studied Medea when I was in college at this theater school,
in
but
preparation.
you're cutting out. I can't hear you.
Yes, we returned right now. It was a glitch. Yes, I was asking you about your experience in conceiving media and in shooting it as a writer, director, producer, and actress as well.
Yes, and in theater school, I studied the Greek classics, including Andronica and Medea. And Andronica was a different story that had a much younger character who stood up for what was right and didn't let anyone tell her what to do. And I related to that character at the time. I didn't really understand Medea when I was 22, but after I got married and divorced and had lived my life, I understood a concept about the myth that I really, and the character Medea, that I really didn't understand before, and I wanted to explore it. And the movie, the symbolism for the movie, and it's very symbolic, came to me in a dream. So I woke up and I had the main symbolic images. And there's Medea, who is a princess from an island, and her whole family are a group of sorcerers, and they're very rich. And her dad has all this magic and all this treasure, and sailors keep coming to the island to try to steal it, and they can't get past the magic. They all die trying to get his treasure. And Medea is a princess on this island with her father, and Jason of Argonauts comes to steal something, the golden fleece, and Medea falls in love with him. Medea falls in love with him. So she promises to help him get through the magic if he will take her with him. And he promises to do that. And she betrays her family and goes with Jason with the promise of marriage. And then once they are away from her island and her people, and he takes her to basically the enemy camp where he lives, and she is completely isolated and has nothing, and she has a baby by Jason, and he's not fulfilling his marriage vows. And he pursues his own ambition, and it's a very tragic story. So the image that I had in the dream was that Medea was sitting at the end of a table, and Jason was at the other end of a table, and there was a rope between them. And Medea was at one end frantically trying to weave the rope as fast as she could, and Jason was at the other end with a knife trying to sever it. And so that's the image that came to me first. And then, do you have any questions about that? Or shall I go on?
No, go on, please.
Okay. And so then as I was developing it, I had been in a play with a very talented costumer, and I was talking to her about doing costumes for this because I wanted all the original costumes, and she was developing ideas. And it occurred to me that the rope, which was so symbolic, had to be part of the costume. And in almost every culture, there is a marriage knot. And so we wanted a marriage knot to be the symbol of the promise. And so her costume, I don't know if you can see it here.
Yes, it was clear in the movie. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The costume is bound with rope, and it really becomes suffocating to her. She's completely bound up in her situation and her emotions and her love, which is complicated. And Jason has a cape that has the marriage knot, which is a constant reminder of his promise, which he no longer wants to keep. And so they have this baby that they both love very much, but he goes off to have an affair with a princess of the land. And Medea at first suspects nothing and is trying to keep her faith, the promise. Then she finds out that he is in fact betraying her, and she remembers herself as a princess and a sorcerer. And Jason has taken an action, and he hasn't seen the consequences. He hasn't thought it through. If he goes on and has an affair with this princess, what's going to happen to the baby? Is he going to take the baby with him? Medea's not going to let that happen. Is he going to leave his son behind? He's not going to let that happen. Does the princess want this bastard baby from a former lover? He doesn't want it. So it's a tragic situation that's really impossible. Jason has put them all in this situation, but he doesn't realize it. So with Medea's sorcerer's powers, she realizes that she has to show Jason exactly what he's done, which is to sacrifice his family. He sacrificed everything that he had. And in a very tragic way, she displays this for him, and he has to live with the consequences of his actions. So that's
Yes.
the that's
Yes. But Andronica, tell me, what do you think about adapting classic mythologies in theater presentation nowadays? You're coming also from a theatrical background, and
right.
also what you mentioned that you got inspired by one of your dreams into writing and creating this film, and great filmmakers like Federico Fellini in Italy and Akira Kurosawa in Japan also used to be inspired by their dreams. They created great films,
Yeah.
56 days, so tell me about the reception of the audience for such quality, such sophisticated ideas. Does the audience exist nowadays?
Well, I took a risk in making this, and I just decided to make it, and I believe that the audiences would get it because I, as an audience member, don't like to be hit over the head with an idea. If you present something, I'll get it. If it's a visual medium, so I don't need you
Mhm.
don't need. I absolutely hate voiceover narration. You don't have to tell me about the movie. Just let me watch it and present it in a way that I can understand it visually. So that was my goal. I didn't realize when I was making it really that it technically has no dialogue at all, and a lot
Yes.
of people really didn't weren't sure about this, but I felt that the audience would understand it, and they really did. They came to the film. I had screened it before we entered festivals, and I had gotten feedback, and everyone not only got the all the symbolism that was there, they really thought it was interesting, and they really liked it, and they thought it worked. So that was a great lesson for me. And I know that I've seen a lot of Shakespeare and a lot of plays like Kurosawa, you mentioned, who adapted Shakespeare. These
Yes.
are classic themes, and they're age old themes, and they never change because people are people. So
Yes.
that's what the Greek myths, that's what Shakespeare, that's, the classics, that's why they're classics, is because people are people and they really deal with universal problems that everyone
Of
experiences. And
course.
that's what I felt Medea was.
Of course. But tell me, Andronica, right now, being in San Francisco, we know San Francisco being a great filming location, especially for action scenes and chases.
Hmm.
I remember the streets of San Francisco with Michael Douglas and the chases, great chases, with I think Dirty Harry films and The Rock was Sean Connery,
Right.
and maybe Bad Boys as well was Will Smith.
Uh-huh.
So these are the types of the conception of San Francisco for audiences. But I want to ask you, as a filmmaker, how do you see San Francisco as a production? Does it compete with Los Angeles, with Miami, with New York, the great cities in the United States, or it has its own speciality?
I think it's special. Um, One of the reasons it's special is because it's so distinctive, and it's a city, and it's an international city, but it's also very much like a small town, and so it's very recognizable. If you're going to film something there, probably everyone's going to recognize it. I don't think that they do have a lot of film and a lot of really good independent filmmakers from San Francisco, but it doesn't compete with the big Hollywood studios. Um, I just don't think there's just not the space for it.
Yes. And right now, after the success of media, I think you have some more projects you're preparing. What can you share with us about them?
Well, after I finished Medea and it went through the festivals and it was very successful, which I was very proud of, um, I wanted to go back to the original film that I had first made because the actors and the crew had worked so hard on it, and I couldn't believe that the producer would just drop it and give them nothing after all their hard work and passion that they really put into it. So I it's over a series of years. It's been about 5 years. I had to raise money, and I paid for it out of my own pocket. And I paid for Medea also out of my own pocket. I didn't raise anybody's money. I paid for it with whatever money I was making at my work. And
Yes.
so I found a really great visual effects guy who would let me pay as I go. So he would create a shot and I would pay for it. And then we would create another shot, and he would create the drone and I would pay for that. And then he would create the missile firing and I would pay for that. And so over time I was able to pay for it. And it was really expensive. And I spent a lot of money on this film, but it's really exceeded my expectations. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I love action as much as I love the classics, Terminator 2 and Mad Max Fury Road, and
Yes.
those are just beautiful, perfect films in my opinion. So I'm really an action buff as well.
Yes.
So when he asked me to write this, and it was about drones, because drones are very controversial, because they can be hacked and they can also, I read an article when I was researching this film, I read that in Russia, they have government drones that go around and kind of monitor people, but they've been hacked and they can actually steal your credit card information out of your wallet from the air. So it's a controversial thing. So I wanted to present all different sides of the dangers and the benefits of military drones, and also of the military, because for me, military is very important, and I view it as a necessity for any country. But it's rough. There's a lot of trauma that goes on, obviously, in the military, and there are a lot of questionable moral things that go on in the military. There's rapes and there's drug dealing, and there are things that don't have the proper oversight that they should. So this was a really rich environment for me to explore, and so that's what
Yes.
that's the goal.
And the movie is finished right now. We can expect to see it soon.
Yes, we have the color correction is just finishing up, and we have our composer. It's going to be an original score, just like Medea was, but we have a really talented composer finishing up the music and the audio. So it should be 2 weeks. We're over deadline. It was supposed to be done in October, but a couple of weeks, and then it'll hit festivals. So I'm very excited. It's been a long journey, but it really exceeds my expectations.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Before I end the interview, I want to ask you, being a filmmaker, producer, performer, yourself, do you have a dream character or a dream project you want to realize, after, your studies, your practice, something you dream of realizing in the future?
I've written a series of scripts, and I've adapted this young adult book, which is a science fiction book, that into a script, a feature script. And I think it's really strong, and it explores a lot of really great themes that I would love to see in film. And so my a main goal of mine would be to get that produced as soon as I can. But it's sci-fi, so I would have to have someone else produce it. I wouldn't be able to produce it, but I would love to get that out there. And I have several other feature scripts that I think that I can do myself. There's a thriller, and there's also a comedy that I have that I think I could produce myself. And I also have another short film that would be my project after drone. So
Excellent.
I got a million ideas. I can't wait to get moving on all of them.
Great, Andronica. Again, I want to thank you very much for coming to the interview tonight,
That's my
to the live, and best wishes for the release of Drone. You know, I look forward at least to see the trailer soon. Please share it with me when you finish it. And yeah, I hope it will be well received, like media, you know.
thank
And I wish you all the success in the last few months of this year and next year. And I look forward for your new projects.
Thank you so much, and I'll definitely stay in touch. And the drone trailer is on my website, so I'll send you the link right now.
It's a pleasure. I like to see it, yeah, and I look forward to see the whole film when it's finished.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Antonica. Have a lovely evening.
You
Bye
too.
bye.
Good night.
Good night. Bye bye.